There's a lot of strategizing that happens as far as controlling populations one way or another.
Right.
Be it denying abortion or, like you said, sterilization, like forced sterilization.
Right.
It's like they're still playing with like chattel as far as they're, you know, you're not even people. They're just playing with your lives. However is best for them, you know, to manipulate things.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
What up? It's Dramos, and this is the recap, of course, as I do each and every week, breaking down some of the biggest headlines from this last week. My guest helping me break it all down today is an artist, an activist, and speaker, Zahira Kelly-Cabrera. She will be hopping on in just a little bit, and fair warning, she is not for the faint of heart. She tells it like it is, so please do not get all sensitive on us. Now, with that said, let's get into some of the BS from this last week. So today I welcome you to another edition of America is a Scary Place to Live if you're a person of color. Now, I know I just said, you know, person of color, and our buddy Tucker Carlson is probably somewhere creepily chuckling to himself right now. But the reality is, there is so much evidence to back up my previous statement. I mean, take, for example, this new bill that was passed this last week, right? It's called the Emmett Anti-Lynching Act of 2022, and it designates lynching as a federal hate crime in this country. And for anybody not familiar, Emmett Till was a 14-year-old black boy who was lynched in Mississippi in 1955 after being accused of offending a white woman in a grocery store. Now, that date, 1955, is pretty profound here, right? For starters, it's the fact that it's taken us 67 years to make lynching a federal hate crime. Why? Like, we really needed 67 years to decide that this was probably not right and should be punished on a federal level? But also, aside from that, it's the fact that it was only 67 years ago that things like this were considered okay. That means that there are literally millions of people walking around in this country right now that lived through this event. Still walking around. I'm going to reiterate that. They're still walking around and they lived through this event. As much as we like to try and make this a so-called thing of the past, it didn't happen that long ago. And with that said, what might actually be scariest of all is that in 2020, you actually had people voting against the passing of this bill. Yes, just 2 years ago, sitting senator from Kentucky, guess who? Rand Paul voted against the passing of this bill. A sitting senator. Like, if that doesn't make you question the reality of what this country stands for, I don't know what will. Now, of course, many will argue that, you know, this is like merely a symbolic bill, that lynching isn't an issue in this country anymore. And sure, you're probably right, but this is actually incredibly important to highlight and to note, because things like this show you exactly what many of the people in power in this country actually stand for. The fact that Rand Paul blocked this bill from being passed just 2 years ago should alarm everyone who claims the U.S. as their primary country of residence. Because when people in power feel so bold as to not have to hide parts of their racism when on the public stage, one is really only left to imagine and quite honestly, be fearful of what they support behind closed doors. Now, with that said, I would say we're going to lighten things up a little bit normally, but I have a feeling we're going to get into more and more BS with this week's guest. Helping me break it all down, my guest this week is an artist, activist, and speaker, Zahira Kelly-Cabrera. How you feeling?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I appreciate you hopping on the show. I know you do a million and one different things. I want to get into all of that, but if it's cool with you, I kind of want to start off kind of tackling some current events from this last week.
Sure, sure.
Okay, so I mean let's first kind of start in the current climate that we're in. I mean, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. I know you're very outspoken. Let's talk first and foremost what we've seen over the last couple of years with this pandemic, right? People have called it the Great Resignation, you know, and all these companies are scrambling right now to pay their workers fair wages for once. You had this restaurant called Rosie's, Mexican restaurant in Florida that got busted for actually not even paying their servers a wage. They were making them live off of tips. They were also making them work overtime with no overtime pay. They had employees under 16 working there after legal hours. And now the restaurant owes $118,000 in back pay to these people. And then on the flip side of that, you have places like Target that has boosted its minimum wage to $24 an hour. I mean, when you're seeing all of these different things go on, I mean, obviously it seems like some of these companies and places of work are having to come to terms with their unfair practices. What's your kind of your initial reaction?
My reaction to that is like it's a sort of chickens coming home to roost type of thing. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, they've been doing this for a really long time. People have just finally reached the breaking point. I mean, they depend on the labor from workers, but they basically treat workers like trash.
Right.
So it's just like there had to come a time when they had to actually like value the fact that their entire company depends on us and they should pay us as such.
Mm-hmm.
With that restaurant, I mean, unfortunately, that's so many places, and I don't believe that it's going to stop anytime soon. But I definitely see Target doing a very good thing because the government is not trying to raise the minimum wage.
Sure.
Inflation and everything is going up. The wages have been stagnant for like several decades at this point.
Right.
So
Right.
that is definitely the way to go. I would love to see more companies go that route, and I bet you they'll get employees.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
instead of the little signs on the door talking about like nobody wants to work for us anymore, so we have to close. It's like, but why don't they want to work for you? What are you offering them?
Right.
Like
Right.
you may as well stay home. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're offering poverty wages, a lot of people have just realized like I may as well honestly just be at home and not risk it.
Right. Right. Especially when you talk about the various options to make money in today's day and age. When you talk about the social media culture, you talk about Etsy, eBay, you know, Squarespace, all these different things. You know, the reality is like you could be flipping old items and make more than like the minimum wage that some of these jobs are paying people. You know, especially these jobs that have relied on, you know, younger people or low income people. Like they can really make more money doing things for themselves and not have to, you know, demean themselves working for a job that obviously doesn't respect them. And I think that's what we're kind of seeing a lot of as well. And also, I mean, when you just talk about Latin culture as a whole, the thing with this restaurant is that they only got caught because there's a hotline for Spanish speaking workers to call up if they're being taken advantage of, essentially. And that brought on this investigation. But the sad thing is you talk about people that come into this country and are taken advantage of because they don't speak the language and that they're desperate. And I mean, this is something that we've seen for forever.
Especially undocumented people. Who are they going to report to?
Right.
Who's going to? And if they report, they're getting deported. So it's like, really, it's anything goes.
Right. Right. I like how you brought up the government as well, because they should be there to protect people. You know what I mean? They should be stepping in and saying this isn't right, you know, but instead it's these same corporations that we see, like the Walmarts of the world, that have the most employees on food stamps, you know, and we end up paying for that extra money as taxpayers, right? Like we're basically paying for the salary that they're not getting from the Walmarts of the world, you know?
Those companies also get tons of subsidies from the government and grants. So it's like so much more money goes into that than actual welfare too. So it's like we're paying welfare twice for these companies, basically.
Right.
As they look down on the single moms or something who actually need the food stamps. Like these corporations are actually getting a huge chunk of money from the government when they don't need it, because their profits are literally in the billions.
Right.
And the government is still literally giving them money and paying for the welfare for their employees, because God forbid they pay, a fair wage. How they're going to make those billions? Actually, they would still be making billions. It's just like greed, because you would still be making a ton of money. You're Walmart,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I mean, well, that's the thing. It's like, you see the salaries of these CEOs and people like that, the higher ups, they're inflated salaries. Meanwhile, they're people, that are actually the ones doing the dirty work to get the job done are having to fight just to make ends meet. You know what I mean? Like it really, I think, is a telling sort of testimonial to like the mindset of many people in this country. You know what I mean? That they really don't give a damn about anybody, other than themselves. It's kind of the American way, this sort of like capitalistic, greedy mentality that really, as we boast we're the greatest country in the world, we're falling short in so many different places,
Yeah, basically.
It's a very, I don't know. I don't want to be too pessimistic here, but it's hard not to be, and it's important that we as citizens speak up, because like you alluded to before, the government isn't stepping in to actually show that they have our best interests at hand.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not even pessimistic. It's actually like realistic. Reality just happens to be fucking depressing.
Right.
That's not to say there aren't good things, but yeah, no, that's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanna shift gears now. I mean, this is something else that people are also calling out our country for, and you happen to be one of those people as well. We're talking about, obviously, all we've heard with Russia invading Ukraine, and a lot of people have been coming out and wanting to stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine and all these different things. And I saw a tweet that you posted that actually kind of resembled some conversations I had been hearing from other people in my life. And I'm going to quote your tweet, and I want to kind of hear you expound upon it a bit. But you said, "A solidarity protest movement bigger than anything we see, you say, ? It doesn't occur to y'all when it was people of color, ? Yeah, I'm gonna have to sit this one out. I'm anti-war, but this is just racist." So let's expound upon that thought a bit. Obviously, you're referring to this solidarity movement that people are saying is, bigger than anything we've ever seen before when it comes to people standing with Ukraine. Let's kind of break that down.
Yeah, I was referring to, like, I keep seeing tweets on the timeline talking about we're going to need a solidarity movement bigger than the world has ever seen before. And I'm just kind of sitting here like, y'all did not have any of this energy for all of these Black and brown countries being bombed. I'm pretty sure the U.S. just recently, in the last few days, dropped bombs on Somalia and stuff like that. Yemen is under fire. The Middle East has been ravaged by the United States. Right. The United States has colonized Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Guam, so many of these other places. And in general, like Great Britain, like all of these big nations keep doing this stuff, and there's never, and like we saw Black Lives Matter and all the backlash against it. Nobody was like, we need the biggest solidarity movement. It's like none of that garners that attention. There's children, Latin American children, in cages right now. You know what I'm saying? In the United States. None of that garners that kind of sentiment. And they're just like, well, we need to stop the nuclear war because, and I'm just like, at this rate, I'm not sure that is for us to solve as the people of color who are under these people's foot. And then it's just so complicated because then we're also seeing how, like in Ukraine, like African and South Asian immigrants treated like really badly. And that's like, honestly, anti-Blackness is global. Whatever the country and your pet cause, that's been happening. Afro-Palestinians, I'm pro-Palestine, but it happened. Anti-Blackness is global, So Black people have to deal with both like the onslaught of what it is to be from that nation on top of the anti-blackness from its own citizens. You know what I'm saying? And it happens in Cuba. I'm also pro-freedom for Cuba, but there's anti-blackness in Cuba, and people have been protesting against it. Venezuela, like there were, as soon as that stuff started happening, there were like white Venezuelans on Twitter, like being super anti-black and racist. It's like, people always find space to be anti-black, but then it's also kind of like, are you asking we, the people who they oppress and who have been being bombed by for all of these years, like, and colonized, like, are we supposed to save you? Like, where are the actual powers of you? Where are the white people? I don't know. It's just like, the garnering of like all this momentum, it's just like it's giving racism because it's white people that it's happening to. And much worse things have happened to us as people of color and are still happening, and nobody has these sentiments, like these grand sentiments. With us, it's just kind of like business as usual. So it's like, while I'm anti-war, like, I cannot tell you that I'm going to go put my body on the line or actually like make all that kind of an effort, which is just like, yo, like, I have my own life to live. I have to survive. And I do not see that solidarity coming for people like us either. So like, what are we, like, what is our role here? Are we like immune? Are we like going to just put our body on the line? It's just kind of, it's not adding up. It's not adding up in so many ways. So it's like, of course, I don't want Ukraine to be invaded. I don't want these people to die. They're innocent people dying. I don't want nuclear war, but like, is that actually on us? And how come you don't feel that way about people of color when we're going through? It's just complicated. It's a lot of stuff going on there, you know?
It definitely is complicated. Actually, to your point, they're bringing up this thing that Biden, you know, his administration promised to repeal Trump's immigration policies, right? But instead, you know, he's actually deported as many Haitians in 1 year as the last 3 presidents did in 20 years, right? And Haiti is obviously going through a humanitarian crisis due to the earthquakes, people being displaced, COVID. I mean, the assassination of their president last year, right? But then now the White House announces that they are accepting Ukrainian refugees.
Exactly. It's just kind of like, so are we really all gonna rally behind Ukraine? I think that they got this.
Yeah, you know, it's tough because I think, you know, obviously there's the human element of it, like you said, you know.
Of course.
And this reminds me kind of what we heard about with the story of Gabby Petito, who was the white girl who went missing. And then like you hear all these things like, but you know how many people of color, how many indigenous women go missing, and we never get the same sort of national headlines. And then you have people being like, you know, how are you pointing this out when the people are obviously going through pain? And it does become this really complicated conversation, you know?
It is super complicated. Like with that Gabby Petito stuff, like I followed it too. And like, I think that it reeks still of domestic violence, of feminicide, you know, which is something that is also familiar for me in the Dominican Republic, where we have one of the highest feminicide rates ever. It's like from jump, that's what it looked like. I was very sympathetic to it, but at the same time, are we going to really deny that literally no one cares when Black and brown women go missing, and we go missing the most?
Yeah.
Literally no one cares. But this is like a cute, blonde, blue-eyed girl. The entire world has to stop. You know, it's like that scary movie reference. Like the whole world got to stop for a white girl who fell down a well. You know what I'm saying? It remains relevant. Like that really is what we're asked. So it's like, nah, like, okay, we can care about that. But like, when are y'all going to care about everybody else too?
Right. And I think what people don't realize is I don't think we are just complaining for the sake of complaining. I think a lot of people are probably really ignorant to this is actually what's happening, right? That we've been programmed to elevate white stories and white, you know, sort of white, you know, moments of weakness or terrible moments that happen to white people and elevate those above moments that happen to people of color. And you know, and to be fair, I'm sure there are a lot of, you know, white people out there who don't even realize that this is what the media has programmed. This is what society has programmed, but you can't be a denier when the facts are the facts at the end of the day.
Yeah, basically. I mean, the stats are underreported, and they'll still tell you that, it's like we are the most susceptible to these things. Black and Indigenous women are the most susceptible to whatever horror we're talking about, Black and Indigenous people in general. So, yeah, I mean, people may not know, but it's just like a general, like, global conditioning at this point where like the whole thing about Black Lives Matter is because really at the end of the day, white lives are the only ones that matter. It's like, yeah, you are human, but the problem is you're the only one who gets to be human at this point. That is an issue. We're all human. So it's like, as much as people have a problem with that slogan, that's where it comes from. It's like, you guys really think that the lives of people like us don't matter. That's why you said.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And obviously we've gone on a lot of the heavier topics. Let's talk about something that's a little bit more celebratory, especially when you talk about the history of Latin America and the culture it has when it comes to how it views women. And we're seeing this this last week where kind of taking a page out of fellow Latin American countries like Argentina and Mexico, Colombia's highest court has officially decriminalized abortion. And they're saying they decriminalized abortions that for the first 24 weeks of pregnancy, meaning that Colombian women can no longer face legal consequences for opting for abortion. And obviously, Latinos as a culture are a lot more conservative than people realize, I think, traditionally, especially because of religion at the end of the day, right? The religion plays a large portion in our households, especially when you're talking about the previous generations. And that's why things like this have remained the way they have, in places like Colombia. I mean, let's talk about this, though, as a woman, seeing a story like this. I mean, how does it make you feel?
I am very, very happy for everyone with a womb, a uterus in Colombia, be they women or non-binary or trans men or whatever they might identify as. Because that's another thing. A lot of people will get mad when we talk about it as anything other than only women. But like, it's 2022. Let's be real out here. I'm super happy for that. It's like a huge step forward for them. I wish that the rest of Latin America could follow suit. In the Dominican Republic, where they won't give us any kind of leeway. They had at one point taken away the legal stuff that made it so people would come after you and you could actually go to jail if you got abortion or whatever. And now they actually backtracked and put it back that way, where there is no exception for rape or for when you have an illness that basically is going to kill you if you carry on with the pregnancy. There's just nothing. So for me, Colombia is studying an example, honestly, for the rest of Latin America. I hope that the other ones take heed. Unfortunately, the whole conservatism is real. The so-called the Christianity, that's all super colonial induced as well. I mean, who brought that and forced that on us? Indigenous and Black people had hella herbs and methods that they had for abortion, pre-colonization. So we did not necessarily have hang-ups about that before these people.
And their own religion.
At the end of the day, it's it's literally your life and your choice, and you don't know anybody's circumstances. As much as people try to go against it, nobody's going to raise your kid for you and pay all the bills that come along with it and push them out for you and go through the pain that, So it's just kind of I'm hoping that this sets the stage for the rest of Latin America eventually rising up to that level, honestly.
Right. But what's actually even scary is that in this country, there's growing movements to make abortion illegal. You know what I mean? And
They're just going backwards.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's like, man, we made strides, but now we're trying to find a way to go back, to how things were, which has so many scary implications in general, not just when it comes to women's reproductive rights, but this is the start, and it's always ironic to me that, because obviously it's conservatives, it's Republicans who are really pushing this. It's always ironic to me that they complain that they want less government, but then they want the government to get involved and tell women what to do with their private parts. It really doesn't make any sense.
Oh, they're also going to be the first ones to complain about so-called welfare moms. Mm-hmm. They're going to be the first ones to complain about how if you're poor, you should be having kids or whatever.
Yep.
But in the U.S., it's like, well, everywhere. There's just like a very far right leaning thing going on globally.
Yeah.
And in the US, it's also about like population numbers. White population numbers are going down.
Yep.
Abortions will keep that up. Mm-hmm. And also, it's like whatever, lack of abortions will, bring their numbers up. But it's also just like they're ensuring that there is an underclass for them to exploit.
Right.
And they prevent abortion too, not for nothing.
Right. Absolutely.
It's like they're ensuring that, their numbers stay a little higher because it's like by, I don't know what year in the future, they're going to be a minority at this point, like Latinos and Black people and everybody else is going to be more people. But also it's just like literally they're making sure that there's still an underclass who's going to join the military.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Who's going to work all these shitty jobs that we were talking about earlier.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And also, it's just plain old misogyny. Just power tripping about the bodies of people who are not men, like cis hetero men, basically.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Right. And sadly, it's the same playbook. They just kind of put a different cover on it. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen this when it came to the sterilization of women in Puerto Rico, decades ago. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen Black people getting tested on for various things, right? Like all these different ways that they do to try and keep, white supremacy living, essentially, right? Like, and white supremacy in the most literal term. It doesn't have to be people in hoods burning crosses, like literally the supremacy of the white race, you know what I mean? And making sure that there is some separation, that it's all just them doing the same thing and just kind of putting a different costume on it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, there's a lot of strategizing that happens as far as controlling populations one way or another.
Right.
Be it denying abortion or, like you said, sterilization, like forced sterilization.
Right.
It's like they're still playing with like chattel as far as they're concerned. You're not even people. They're just playing with your lives. However is best for them, to manipulate things.
Yeah. Much. No, at 100%. We took another turn into the negative over here, but yeah, I mean, you have to have these conversations at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Because like, if we're not having them, the other side definitely is not having them, and they'll be happy to sweep this under the rug even more.
Basically.
So let's now. I want to talk about all that you do, because I know you kind of wear a lot of different hats. I know you're a speaker, you're an activist. I've seen you, writing and participating for different, Latin-based social media sites and producing content for them. I mean, anybody that's not necessarily familiar with what exactly you do, let's kind of just put them on to some of the projects that you're really passionate about right now.
Yeah, right now I am honestly still doing talks at universities about race and gender in Latin America.
Yeah.
That's like my bread and butter. I am continuing to do the writing. I am continuing to take on whatever comes along. I'm doing consulting, like cultural consulting for networks like HBO and stuff like that. And for Urbano artists, which I'm not going to name at this point, but the really big ones have been calling me to ask me, like, so I have this new song, so how do I do this so that it's socially responsible? Because like we're reaching that point, you know what I'm saying? They're realizing there's going to be pushback if I'm not on point and correct.
Right.
Especially when it's the ones who have like a woke image. already. It's like they want to do the right
we're
thing.
we're talking about like the J Balvins of the world, obviously, because he's faced a lot of that backlash.
Well, not
I don't mean
necessarily
you're
the
working with him,
Balvins, yeah.
but he is an example right now of somebody who, I mean, I want to be able to just say he was blind to it, but just because I have been a fan, but somebody who obviously didn't take the time to dot his I's and cross his T's. You know what I mean?
But the thing about J Balvin too is he knows exactly what he's doing and all of the critique that's coming. There's like a documentary of his that came out, and I haven't watched it because like I just refuse to give him the views. But people who have watched it say how like throughout the whole thing he's complaining about the critiques of anti-Blackness and all the other stuff. So it's just like he's perfectly 100% aware. However, in his mind, he is a victim. He does not have to change anything. He doesn't have to do anything different. People are just bullying his poor self. Just like you're filthy rich. You're like buying, I don't know, $300,000 watches and stuff like that. As a Latin American, in dollars, do you know what that means in Latin America? Like, dude. So it's like, but I'm basically doing stuff like that. There's just a lot that I'm like sort of plotting on as well, like a pilot for a TV show, like a mini series based here in the Dominican Republic in Barrio, because I just feel like that's stuff that just doesn't get done, pretty much. We don't really exist in the media like that, but basically my work is just questioning all this stuff, like why do you turn on Univision and Telemundo and all the Latin channels and everybody looks white? Are we white countries? Is this Sweden? Is Latin America Sweden? You know what I'm saying? Like, where are the Black people? Where are the indigenous people? In like music, everybody's got Black aesthetics on. It's Black music, Black dancing, Black slang, like Afro-Latino slang. But you can't find a single Black girl on a mic or on the radio somehow. How is that possible? So it's just kind of like, it's stuff that makes people uncomfortable, but it's like it has to be questioned, it has to be said. And I guess that is really what I have been doing at this point.
I love that. That's beautiful. I mean, obviously it's really important work, and every one of these types of conversations starts out as difficult, but the hope is that over time people become more aware and then more open to understanding kind of the error of the ways of the way things have been done historically, and that's the only way we can get to healing is actually having a real conversation, and then, using that new knowledge to work past it.
Yep. Basically, it's like among Latinos, we just have like this thinking like, that doesn't happen among us. That's just in the U.S. Don't bring that over here. And it's like, no, baby, the U.S. got that from us. Latin American colonizers did it first. They created that hierarchy that we see now with indigenous and Black people at the bottom. And white people at the top. And still in Latin America, you look at the upper classes, it's going to be usually whiter people, you know? Britain was inspired by what was happening in Latin America, and they were like, hey, we want to do this too. So like about 100 years later, they tried to colonize North America, or they didn't try, they did. But they followed the schematic that was created in, like, say, countries like mine, which was the first country that was colonized, the Dominican Republic / Haiti, which was indigenous genocide, bringing over slaves, creating racial hierarchy, They literally got that from us, and Latin Americans just have to sort of come to terms with that, like, none of this is coincidental. We've actually been doing this for 600 years. Our hands are not clean. They're not, That's not gringos. The gringos got it from us.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a dark part of our history that we have to be able to come to terms with in order to progress and become stronger and more united as a community, for sure.
Pretty much.
So where can people follow you if they want to check out more of your content? Where do you want to push them to?
I'm on Instagram at bad_Dominicana 2.0, Twitter at bad_Dominicana. I'm not for the weak or the faint of heart. Just be prepared. I just tell it like it is.
I love it. And I love that you also had to give a little warning to anybody before.
It's because people come and then they're like, oh my God, how dare you talk about the things that you are known for talking about? It's like, this is what I do.
Right.
Like be prepared.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, I appreciate you hopping on the show. It's been a pleasure getting to talk with you and pick your brain. I'm sure we'll connect more at some point down the road.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Man, big shout out to my guest this week, Zahira Kelly-Cabrera. Make sure you follow her if you're trying to really get in the nitty gritty. And with that said, I do want to bring some positivity in the show and lighten things up a little bit. Of course, in the form of a positive quote. Now, this week's quote comes to us from Isabel Allende, and she says, "You only have what you give. It's by spending yourself that you become rich." And what does that mean? Well, as we talked about, earlier, we were talking about these corporate juggernauts and the greed that's involved in them just trying to become richer while trampling the people that are actually helping make that business run on a day-to-day basis. And these people aren't actually rich. Maybe financially, sure, they have money out there that they can do some of the things that they want to do, but they haven't become rich on a spiritual level, which at the end of the day is what it's all about. If you're actually seeking real happiness and real fulfillment in this world, it doesn't come from the amount of money that you have in the bank account, and it doesn't come from your job title. I love this quote because it's saying that real riches, real success comes from how much you're willing to give to others, how much you're willing to help pick up your fellow man. And I also kind of two-parted of this quote. I had heard Nipsey Hussle randomly talking about this, a video somebody posted on Instagram, and he was saying the same thing, that so many people are trying to get more, save more. But the reality is, like, when you leave this earth, your goal should be to have, nothing left in the tank, that you laid it all on the line. You put all of yourself out there. You gave this life everything that you had. That is the goal. That is real fulfillment. And that is a real life that is worth living. And with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning in to another episode. I'll catch y'all next week with a brand new one. Until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.